course, Barack Obama and the Democratic Party get hundreds of millions, billions of dollars in contributions from big labor.
Good evening and welcome to the rest of the news. We have a tremendous program tonight, and our special guest is Brendan Cole.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us where you're from.
Well, I live in Lexington, Kentucky. I'm the executive director of the Kentucky Right to Work Committee. I originally hail from the state of Michigan, which is the now 24th right to work state. And so workers in Michigan now have the same rights as half of the country. It was the 24th state, and Wisconsin followed it being number 25. And West Virginia is probably going to be passing right to work in the next 2 weeks. So it'll be 26.
Wow.
Making Kentucky number 26 or 27, depending on if West Virginia does indeed pass it in the next couple of weeks.
Well, tell us, why should Kentucky pass the right to work law?
Well, it's
Tell us
quite
kind
simple.
of what it means, yeah.
Right to work is a very simple principle. It simply means that workers should not be forced to pay union dues or be a member of a union. So currently, here in the state of Kentucky, if you work at a unionized company, say Ford or GM, Ford or FedEx or UPS here in Kentucky, which are unionized, you are forced to pay union dues or you're fired. If you don't pay the dues, you're fired. So in 25 states currently, including the last 3, Michigan, Indiana, and Wisconsin, workers have the choice whether or not to pay union dues. And we're trying to make Kentucky able to have that choice as well.
Well, I think it's important to remember that when they pay union dues, they are paying to the Democrat Party by and large.
When you talk about where union dues end up going politically, 90 to 95% of union contributions from big labor go to Democrats.
So really they're saying if you want to work at Ford, you got to support the Democrat Party.
For the most part, yes.
Which isn't really fair.
No, I mean, especially if a worker is a pro-life Republican, somebody who's pro-life, pro-family, is a registered Republican and votes Republican, it's not right for them to be forced to pay dues to a union where a lot of that money goes to Democrats who they disagree with on important issues that are to the very heart of their morals, such as social issues or even economic issues when it comes to taxation.
Right. The Democrat Party totally removed God from their platform about 2 years ago, and then they manipulated and put the word God, back in their platform through trickery or something. They didn't really have the votes. Would you see that on television?
I did not. Now, one thing important to note is the Kentucky Right to Work Committee is a nonpartisan organization.
Right.
So we're strictly interested in passing a right to work law. Now, generally, it's been done with Republican support. For instance, when Indiana passed right to work in 2012, not a single Democrat voted for it. The same was true in Michigan and Wisconsin. The last state that have Democratic support to pass a right to work law was Oklahoma in the early 90s. But by and large, it's with Republican support, but there are, especially the further south you get, there are some Democrats that do actually support right to work.
That's interesting. Okay, so in general, what happens, say we were to pass right to work laws in Kentucky tomorrow, what could we expect to happen?
Well, first of all, workers would be free to choose whether or not they want to pay dues. So the issue of freedom really is the number one concern for workers. So freedom is the number one issue because, like most Americans, I'm sure that you agree that it's wrong to force somebody to pay for something they don't agree with.
Well, yeah, and to support a party that they don't agree with.
That's absolutely right. And so that's the first great factor about right to work is workers get the freedom to choose whether or not they want to pay union dues. And then you also have economic benefits of right to work. Indiana, which, as I said, was the 23rd state to pass a right to work law. Before they passed a right to work law, they lost 200,000 manufacturing jobs from 2002 to 2012. Right to work was passed in 2012, and since it's been enacted, they've gained 43,000 new manufacturing jobs in just that 3.5-year period.
Yeah. I've talked with people about right to work laws and some union people, and they say, oh, well, if you pass a right to work law in Kentucky, then the wages will go down for everybody.
That is actually not true. Recent studies have indicated that the growth from 2004 to 2014 in right-to-work states, compensation growth was approximately 15%, whereas in non-right-to-work states, it was 8%.
So really,
double compensation growth in right-to-work states.
If Kentucky passed a right-to-work law, the people that work in Kentucky would end up making more money.
Correct.
That's, I think, something that, they try to cover up.
Absolutely.
Or say it's just the opposite.
If you take a look at when you control for cost of living, because obviously in a non-right-to-work state like New York, it costs a lot more to live in New York City than it does Louisville, Kentucky, or Lexington, Kentucky. So when you control for cost of living, in right-to-work states, the income is $40,000 approximately, whereas in non-right-to-work states, it is $37,000. So a $3,000 difference of people making more money when it's controlled for cost of living in right-to-work states than non-right-to-work states.
Right. And, of course, Kentucky has one of the worst personal incomes of all the states. Well, it seems to me that in general, we didn't really maybe emphasize this too much, but in general, the Democrats vote against right to work and the Republicans vote for right to work.
It is generally true.
So, and in other words, the Republicans control the state Senate in Kentucky, and now they have the governor's position, but they still do not control the House. The House is in Democrat hands it's real close. What do you know the numbers?
It is currently 50 to 47.
50 to 47. So we need a couple more Republicans.
Actually, no, it's 50 to 46. And
at least
there
two more.
4 special elections coming up on March 4th. And now the interesting thing about Kentucky...
March 4th or 5th?
March 4th.
Okay.
I'm sorry, March 8th. Interesting thing about Kentucky rules in the House is in order to pass a bill, you actually have to have 51 votes because there is no tiebreaker in the House, which sounds ridiculous, but it's the truth. In order for us to pass right-to-work law, we need 51 supporters of right-to-work. And whether they're Republicans or Democrats, we'll take either. Now, generally, as you said, they tend to be more Republican than Democrat. But when some southern states pass right-to-work, like when Arkansas passed right-to-work in 1947, they actually had Democratic majorities in both the House and the Senate.
Really?
That's when the idea of Dixiecrats actually still existed, whereas nowadays Southern Democrats are overwhelmingly aligned with Barack Obama and the more liberal Democratic Party.
And it seems to me, I was surprised at how much money the labor unions put into elections. Could you review that for us?
Yeah, organized labor, their annual budget is about $9 billion.
$9 billion?
$9 billion. So they have a very good chunk of money to spend on elections and lobbying. In 2012, for the federal races for Congress, U.S. Senate, and the presidency, they spent $1.5 billion. That's billion with a B, not with an M, on election spending.
Yeah.
Which is more than Obama spent. That's more than Romney spent. That was the largest single entity to spend on elections.
Wow.
And 95% of that money went to Democrats.
Does that include government unions too?
That's all unions across the United States.
Unions.
$9 billion a year. And in 2012 was approximately $1.5 billion spent in the federal elections. That does not include state and local elections.
Wow, that's really something. So because the Democrats, at least up till today, controlled the House, it's going to be hard to pass right-to-work legislation.
Correct. Which is why we're pushing hard to get a vote in the House this year because, I mean, you know politicians. They'll tell you anything you want to hear.
Right.
Until you actually have a recorded vote on an issue like right to work, you never really know where they actually stand.
Right.
So that's why we want to get a recorded vote so we can know finally where each representative stands on right to work.
So I'm trying to get straight in my own mind what these dates are again. You say March 8th.
The special election is on March 8th.
Now, is that after the deadline for introducing legislation?
The deadline to file the bill is March 1st, but the deadline that really counts is February 15th or February 19th, which is next Friday, and that's when you have to get a bill in so it can be drafted.
So really, even if the Republicans won the election, it would be too late to introduce, or do you already have the bill?
Bill has been introduced in the Senate, but we're looking for a bill to get introduced in the House because last year was a great year for right-to-work supporters across the state of Kentucky. Matt Bevin, who is a big supporter of right-to-work, was elected governor, and in the first week of the 2015 legislative session, the state Senate passed the right-to-work bill. So we already know we can pass it through the Senate. We just have to see if we can pass it through the House, which is why we want to vote in the House. And so,
because of these technical problems, what can we do right now as far as our listeners are concerned that want to see a right-to-work law passed?
well, the number one thing you can do is you can contact your legislators and ask them to support right to work. And you can call the Legislative Research Council, which will get you into any legislator's office at 502-564-8100. And you just ask for your representative, Representative X, and they'll get you right into it. You can ask them to support right to work.
Right.
If enough, because one thing to remember about politicians is they care about one thing, and that's re-election. And when they start getting calls and mail and emails from their constituents asking, do you support right to work? Once they get enough on one issue, they're going to start thinking, well, I better support right to work, even if they're opposed to it, or they're going to or I'm going to lose my re-election.
Right, right. So that number again is area code 502-564-8100. 8100. So they can call that right now if they know their state legislator's name.
And if they don't know their state legislator's name, they can go to LRC. The best thing to do is actually Google LRC Kentucky, and that'll take you to the Legislative Research Commission's website. And there's a button you can click on that website, and you just enter your address, and it'll tell you who your legislator is if you don't already know.
Of course, the message line, if they dial the message line, they will tell them who their legislator is.
Right, you can also do that. Or you can just go online and enter your address. And
yeah.
You don't have to rely on a government bureaucrat to tell you who represents you.
Okay, the number for the message line is 800-372-7181. For the message line, 800-372-7181. And they will tell you who your state legislator is. That's the old timers way of doing it.
Correct.
800-372-7181. Our listeners can call, and it just doesn't seem right that people are forced to support a party that they don't agree with.